there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, we do. So I'd like to call to order the March 15th virtual public meeting of the Highland Park Board of Education. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the Highland Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting, setting forth the time, date, and location to be submitted for publication to the Home News Tribune and Star Ledger and posted to the board's website at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the board will be given the opportunity to do so before the board adjourns for the evening. During this meeting, we ask that all members of the public mute themselves unless they are speaking during a public comment period. If needed, we may mute you ourselves. You may leave your video on or off at your option. If we experience bandwidth issues and believe that limiting video could help, we may do so. We will have 2 public comment periods. If at that time you wish to speak, please raise your blue virtual hand in Zoom and wait for me to call on you. If you cannot raise your virtual hand, or if I miss your virtual hand, please turn on your video camera and raise your actual hand. New Jersey law requires us to inform you, excuse me, that all New Jersey law requires us to inform you that all commenters must behave appropriately. In Highland Park, this means no screaming, obscenities, or inappropriate video displays. In the event of a speaker's inappropriate behavior, they will be muted, and we will come back to them at a later time. If the speaker is the final commenter at the last final comment period, we will invite them to return at our next meeting. Linda, could you take the roll, please?
Ms. Simorusti?
Here.
Ms. Coleman?
Here.
Ms. Gowan?
Here.
Mr. Krieger?
Here.
Mr. Peters?
Here.
Mr. Patton?
Here.
Bruce? Mr.
I'm gonna have to.
Mr. Rizlevich?
Here.
Mr. Woodward?
Here.
Okay, Linda and Scott, could we have the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge
I
allegiance
pledge allegiance
to the flag
to
of the
the
United States of America
States of America
and to the
and
republic
to the
for which
republic
it
for
stands,
which it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
with
and
liberty,
justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. Let me just check if anybody is talking in the background. Okay, this looks.
We had a couple of folks muted.
Okay, you muted them. So communications, we had one communications from Elizabeth Wild Greenberg about changing from remote to in-person on February 23rd, 2021. We had one and perhaps 2 communications that were sent to the board after this agenda was finalized. They'll appear in the next agenda. I want to talk about communications. Again, if you want to communicate to the board, send your emails or your other electronic messages to the board at board@hpschools.net. Again, I repeat, board@hpschools.net. We've had communications that have come to half the board. We've had other communications come to perhaps myself and Ann and Scott, and folks think that's a communication to the board. It is not a communication to the board. It is communication to members of the board. We need you to send it to board. Board includes all board members. It includes the superintendent, and it includes Linda, who's the board secretary and business administrator. So again, board@hpschools.net. Okay, so we have a minutes from February 22nd. And we'll be approving those at the next meeting on March 22nd. Polly, you're there. Could you give us the student representative report, please?
Yeah, hi everyone. Okay, so starting off with the high school, this year the HPHS Drama Club is presenting a virtual musical called Carrying the Banner, a musical collection on Sunday, March 21st at 7 p.m. Tickets are available by donation online. I think you can find it through Genesis and email. Congratulations to the boys basketball team for winning the Payne Brokaw GMC Tournament Pod Championship. They defeated Somerset Tech 40-37 in the finals. And then also congratulations to girls basketball players Sina Copperdale and Janiyah Mitchell, who were both awarded second team All Blue Division awards. Sina averaged a double-double on the season with an average of 12 points and 13 rebounds per game, and Janiyah averaged 13 points and 3 steals per game. Additionally, in addition to the individual awards, the team received the Blue Division Sportsmanship Award. So congrats goes to both teams. And then in the middle school, Mr. Farmer is holding his second annual Spring Break Bowl. It's a Kahoo competition where students answer questions about events that went on during the school year. And it's a really great bonding activity. Miss Miller took her students on a virtual field trip to the Liberty Science Center Planetarium, which sounds really fun. And then the middle school girls basketball team actually went undefeated this season. And this whole month of March, the middle school is celebrating Spirit Days in person. At Bartle this Wednesday, author Susan Baird will be at an assembly with each grade. She'll be hosting a mindfulness workshop for district staff. Thank you to the HPEA for the grant. They're looking forward to that. Second and third grade students had a fun lunch with the principal on March 11th and 12th. And then the fourth graders will lunch with the principal March 19th, and the fifth graders will lunch March 25th. Friday, March 19th at 2 p.m., Miss Young will be holding a social hour on Zoom, and students can just, mingle, choose a topic, do some video games, things like that, just a nice social time. And then at Irving, they started celebrating authors from all over the country, and students enjoyed bedtime stories with Ms. McNally to wrap up Read Across America Week. For Women's History Month, the students will be learning about inspirational and diverse women through reading and during their social studies periods. And then they look forward to continuing their monthly school events with Bust a Move and Mr. Luxembourg on March 27th, who will be teaching students popular dances to music. And that's it for the students report.
Holly, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any board members have any questions or comments? Okay, with none. Oops, Anne, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Polly, I was just wondering, is Mariana's work schedule still keeping her away from us for now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she has to work pretty late on Mondays.
All right. Well, we miss you, Mariana. if
We
you're
miss
listening to
her.
this.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I'll
Polly.
relay the message.
Thank you.
Darcy, did you want to say something? You good?
I was just virtually clapping for Polly.
You were clapping. Right. Okay. Again, thank you. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Taylor for his superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mark. It's my pleasure and honor to have invited a guest here with us, Abby Stern-Cardinal, who's here. She's right under Rob Rosewich, according to my screen. And I invited Abby to come to this board meeting because she has done such amazing work for not only the Highland Park community, but specifically for our district community. I think it was 3 board meetings ago. Abby was at a meeting, and I'd never known who she was. So when I saw her name pop up on my Zoom room, I wondered who this person is. Well, that evening, Abby emailed me and asked if she could help secure vaccination appointments for our staff, our personnel. And I'll be frank with you, Abby. I didn't know you from a hole in the wall, but I don't know. I felt something good through the digital vibes, and I said, you know what? Let's try this out. So I connected with Abby, and a few weeks later, she secured 20. No, it wasn't even. I think a few weeks later. I think it was within a week. She secured 20 appointments for members of our district personnel. In fact, in 24 hours after Abby put out her information. I sent it out to all staff. At first, it was her contact info, and then she got smart and worked with another person who's here, and we'll give a shout out to Rebecca Hirsch, who partnered with her. They came up with a Google Doc or a form, and then I sent that form out. And before you know it, we had many more support staff, faculty, and leadership get their vaccination appointments. I have to tell the board that I'm getting my first vaccine tomorrow, thanks to the broader community outreach that Abby, Rebecca, Buffy, and some other friends of ours in the community have come together to produce. So I think it was yesterday, yeah, Sunday, I got an email from Rite Aid out of the blue. I had no idea what went down, and all of a sudden I got an email from one of Abby's compatriots who said, "I just secured you an appointment, Dr. Taylor." So I'm so grateful, and I really wish I could do more than provide you this certificate. I'm going to do this. I might even go an extra step, Abby, and frame it and then send it out to you. Or I might have one of our folks just drop it off at your doorstep. But Abby, I know you can hear me. You're going to be a parent in our district in a year or two. And I can't wait, because if you're there she is. If you're as contributory as a parent as you have been as a member of our community, wow, we're blessed. So, and you don't have to say anything, Abby, unless you choose. If you would like to do so, you can just unmute yourself. But if you don't want to, you can just wave, and we'll all clap and thank you so much for all you've done.
So I just wanted to say that we're still helping people, and I have a group of volunteers now that actually there's 3 more people who just reached out that we're going to try to get information to get them booking tonight. So please send people our way. We really want to help the community get vaccinated for, all of us, and to get things back to normal as soon as possible. So all teachers are eligible. Eligibility opened up for a lot more people today. So check your eligibility. More opens up on the 29th, and then everybody on May 1st. So just feel free to reach out. I think Dr. Taylor sent out a email to the teachers, but we have, I'm trying to think the best way to say we have a form that's a bit.ly form, but I don't remember off the top of my head. We're calling ourselves HP Vax Help. So just reach out to me, through Facebook or email, or ask someone to contact me, and we'll help you out.
You know what, Abby, it dawned on me, I don't think I posted the same form that I sent to my personnel on our Facebook page, but I'll do that tonight. So that'll be a good way for any people here in our meeting room to just be able to click a link and get straight to you.
And the only other thing is, I just thought, so I think we all know there's a big problem for people who don't have access to technology. So if any of you know people who don't have access to technology, please help them fill out the form. We are very limited in our resources. So if anyone can help people who are really struggling to get on the internet, connect with us, that would be really wonderful too.
And Abby, I'm sure you're aware, Buffy and I have been emailing each other a plan to have her leave me give me some paper copies. I'm going to have our Spanish and traditional Chinese translators translate those documents for the community, and then we'll send back the digital versions to your group, and then you can spread that word out. The district will be snail mailing the form to those individuals we have on a list who would like us to send home paper copies of all kinds of materials. So we'll do that too. Abby, I've called you a saint on numerous occasions. There's no reason for me to stop now. You're a saint. Thank you.
I just wanted to, I wanted to add that while we're clapping, that I met with Abby, and she has personally gotten appointments for over 300 people. And if you know how hard it is to get an appointment for 1 or 2 people, this is just an incredible effort, and it's amazing. And now there are more folks doing it. And I would say to everyone that's in this meeting now, tell your friends, especially tell your older friends. I sent out a blast email to people closer to my age, some of whom aren't technologically savvy. And one of them, by the way, got an appointment by just hearing about this. So it's fantastic, and I applaud you. So
wonderful, Abby. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby.
thanks so much.
Okay, so I am going to switch gears now. I want to share with the board and the community the latest information about the status of in-person school, and then follow up with the board and the community with data that speaks to an idea that Monique and her committee brought to my attention, the Equity and Excellence Committee brought to my attention about a month ago. We asked each other why we have almost 70% of our, on average, students learning remotely. And so I put a survey out, and it actually got 421 responses, a pretty decent response rate. It's about a 30% response rate. So I'm going to share that data in just a second. First things first, I want to get everybody up to speed. Today was the first day we combined both cohorts at Bartle. And so now all of the students who initially opted to learn in person at both Irving and Bartle are coming to school for 5 days per week. I'm very happy about that. We continue to provide a cohort or hybrid model for our middle and high school students. So cohort A and B come in for 2 days per week, and then are down or home for 2 weeks, 3 days. I'm sorry, 3 days a week. We have started as of today having all of the students who were in what we refer to as our perseverance pod, approximately 30 students who we know had difficulty with internet at home, may have lived in multifamily dwellings, so it was hard to focus, or simply just showed us a very serious need to have some in-person time with peers in their schools. So we brought all those Perseverance Pod students in now 4 days a week. And I should have indicated that on the slide. And we've also now brought our English language learners at the middle and high school and a very large number of our special needs students, those students who have IEPs, in for 4 days a week. We continue at the middle and high school on Wednesdays to keep the school closed for deep cleaning. And as the board and the community is aware, we use Wednesdays now as what we refer to as a catch-up day to provide intensive support for students who require such. I thought you'd want to know, board and community would want to know what number of students we currently have coming in person. I said that approximately 30% of our students in the schools are learning in person. Here is the breakdown. You can see Irving has the highest rate of those students in the entire student body who are coming in person, and the high school has the lowest rate of students who are coming in person. And we've talked in the past about staffing. I want to be sure the board and the community is aware that our Irving and Bartle programs are fully staffed in person. As we all know, we've been running a program since September that has at Irving and Bartle the students, close to 65–70% of whom who are at home learning by choice, to have dedicated at home, virtual or at home teaching teachers. So we've been able to split our staff so that we have committed teachers to work solely with those students at home who are focused and expert in virtual teaching. And then we've had the remaining staff in person to accommodate the other kids. At the middle and high school, we're hovering around a 50% in-person teaching rate. We're using the hybrid model. Those students whose teachers are teaching from home, who come in because they're one of our 30% or 23% the students in person, are supervised in a classroom, and they will Zoom out with the peers in the virtual learning environment with those teachers who are teaching from home. So let's talk about the survey I mentioned earlier. So I surveyed the entire K-12 community, parents and guardians, and I did receive 421 responses, which again, I feel is a pretty decent response rate. It's about 30%. Let me share some overall response demographic data with you, and then I'm going to show you the questions I asked and some of the answers I received, and then I'm going to provide some comments as well that I picked up on the survey. So the numbers you see before you are the raw numbers of people out of the 421 who responded, broken down by the demographic identification that I used. This amounts to the following percentages. Now, the next set of data I'm going to show you, in case you want to compare the percent of survey responses to the percent of students represented by each demographic total in our total student population, is going to be the current demographic data regarding our whole student population. Right now, for instance, our Asian students make up 21% of our entire district population, and so on and so forth. So I'll let you sit on that for a minute. This file, by the way, members of the board, is currently residing in the board agenda folder, and I will post this information as I did last month when I presented data to the district website and the Facebook page. There'll also be a narrative version of the information for those who are visually impaired.
Scott, thanks for addressing that. And this is Monique. Can you just, though, still run through the main numbers for the benefit of people who do tune in?
Yeah, do you want me to go through everything here? You want me to
yeah, I think
verbalize
that
the
would
numbers?
be. Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
So well, I'm not going to go over that information. So we, of all the responses, 80 represented Asian students, 30 Black students, 51 Hispanic students, 53 of those who identified as multiracial, and 207 parents, guardians who identify as white. This amounts to, percentage-wise, 19% of Asians who filled out the survey, 7% of our respondents were Black, 12% of our respondents were Hispanic, 13% multiracial, and 49% white. And finally, when looking at the general district breakdown, demographic breakdown, I can tell you that currently 21% of our students, K-12, are Asian. This is total student population. 10% are Black, 23% are Hispanic, 7% identify as multiracial, 39% are white. So now let's take a look at the data. I only asked one question and provided people opportunities to respond with multiple choice options, and then had an open-ended question answer option, which provided me over 200 comments. The question I asked was simply, why did you or did your child choose to learn from home? And what you're looking at here is a breakdown of out of 7 options, 4 that received the highest frequency of responses. I'm gonna have another slide coming up because I just couldn't fit all the data on one slide. Another slide coming up that will show you the other 3 options that people could have chosen. In a second, I'm going to also show you what percent these responses make up of all the responses we received. Are there any questions about what we're looking at? So, I mean, my takeaway is when just even giving this a cursory look, the most prevalent response was that that concern for health and safety. By the way, I ordered the responses from slide to slide in terms of frequency. So you're going to see that the next slide has a very low frequency of responses for the other 3 options. And here are the percentages. So I'm not going to, I'll read all the data. So 83% of our of the respondents who identified as Asian for the survey said that their kids stayed home out of concern for health and safety. I didn't break down percentages for the other numbers, but I will say in terms of the raw data, that means 66 of the 421 responses were from Asians who completed the survey and identified concern about health and safety be the reason why they kept their kids home. 5 respondents who were Asian stated that they kept their kids home because they felt too many teachers were remote, so it didn't make it worthwhile for them to stay home. Obviously, these are middle and high school individuals who were responding. 2 Asians responded that they felt schedules made it difficult to accommodate childcare. That's why they kept their kids home. And 2 indicated that the children were just learning better with virtual learning. 63 of all of our Black respondents to the survey indicated that health and safety was the #1 reason why they, that was the main reason why they had to keep their kids home. In terms of raw data, 6 respondents who identified as Black said too many teachers working remotely, not making it worthwhile, is what kept the kids home. 1, that schedules made it difficult for childcare, and none of our Black respondents indicated that their children were learning better with virtual learning. In terms of the Hispanic population, 78% of our Hispanic respondents indicated that safety and health was the main reason why they kept the kids home. None of our Hispanic respondents indicated that there were too many teachers who were working remotely to make it worthwhile. 4 responded that scheduling made it hard for them to accommodate childcare, and none indicated that their kids learned better with virtual learning. In terms of our multiracial respondents, 62% indicated that, and that amounts to 33 total, indicated that health and safety was the main reason why they kept the kids home. 1 responded that it was a matter of too many teachers working remotely. 2 responded that it was schedules that were making it difficult for childcare. 1, that children learn better with virtual learning. And of our white respondents, 47% of that number of the white respondents indicated that safety and health was the main reason. 52 raw, talking raw number, I didn't work out the percentage, but 52 instead of 98. 52 indicated that too many teachers working from home just didn't make it worthwhile for them to bring their kids in for in-person. 10 indicated that it was scheduling making it difficult for childcare. That was the reason. And finally, 12 indicated that their kids actually learn better with virtual learning. And here are the other options that I provided people from which to choose. They could have indicated that there was a general lack of trust in schools that didn't compel them to have their kids come in, that they had concern about prejudice and bias towards their children, and finally that they had the need for their children to take care of younger siblings. I'm assuming that's middle and high school, maybe 5th grade students, children taking care of younger kids, Irving and little grade Bartle. I didn't work out percentages because the numbers were so small, but I'll just say them out loud. Of our Asian respondents, only 1 indicated that general lack of trust was an issue. None suggested there was a concern about prejudice or bias. 1 did indicate that there was an issue with the children needing to take care of younger siblings, which is why kept the kids home. None of our Black survey respondents indicated that general lack of trust, concern about prejudice or bias, or an issue with siblings taking care of other siblings was an issue, well, according to the respondents, that led them to keep the kids home. And among our Hispanic population, one indicated that it was a general lack of trust. One respondent indicated that it was concerned about prejudice or bias. And none indicated that there was an issue with siblings taking care of siblings. Among our multiracial population, no respondents indicated a lack of trust in schools. One did suggest that there was concern about prejudice or bias, and none indicated that there was an issue with sibling caretaking. And finally, among our white population, 8 indicated there was a general lack of trust, which compelled them to keep their kids home. No white respondents pointed out that there was concern about prejudice or a child sibling caretaking issue. So I received over 200 comments. I uploaded all of the comments in PDF format to the board agenda folder. They're anonymous. But I did take out what I thought was, I read all of them. I read all 240, I think it was, no, I'm sorry, 220 and change. I chose what I thought was a representation of the general theme of the input I received. So it's not perfect, but I did what I could to just share some of what was provided to me. So here's one set of comments. I'm going to show you another set.
Scott, would you like me to read off one of these comments? I know you've been talking a lot running through this data.
You want me to read the comments too?
I think it would be helpful just to hear some of these comments aloud.
I also think we need to be mindful of some of the parents who are visually impaired.
Well, that's why.
Monique,
Well,
why don't
Michelle,
Monique, why don't you do it? You offered to read them?
Yeah, I'm offering.
ahead,
So
do
I
it.
know you've been, I don't mind doing that for you,
Scott's
Scott.
going to lose his voice. So
Yeah,
why don't
exactly.
you do it?
Trying to help.
and just a reminder that I'm converting, this file is being converted so that people can use proper software so they can hear it verbally. Go ahead, Monique.
Yep.
Be your advancer.
Yep. So the first comment on the screen says, we chose remote learning not only out of concern for family members with pre-existing conditions, but also out of concern for the health of our district's teachers and staff and their families and our community as a whole. Another comment, I don't have faith that the school district will remain open. I would rather let him learn remotely and not being constantly sent home because someone is sick in his pod. Another comment, my concern is more for community health and safety, since the majority of studies claiming to show that schools are not big drivers of COVID spread are flawed by contact tracing methods that neglect asymptomatic spread. And students in nations with robust contact tracing do show that in-person schooling drives community spread numbers upward. Another comment, my child has had a lot of difficulties with bullying and varying support from teachers. Although she misses socializing, the lack of negative interactions has resulted in better grades and a more positive attitude about school. Another comment, or another parent's comment, as a high school senior, my son decided that he'd prefer to stay home, sleep in as much as possible, and continue to learn online. He said that he is learning perfectly well and that he doesn't want to have to leave the house. We don't have concerns about COVID precautions at the school. He simply prefers to stay home.
Okay, thank you, Monique. I'll read the final slide. I just have some closing comments. So what lies ahead? A lot. I can tell you that the leadership team has met weekly to spend at least an hour ironing out nuts and bolts plans for the remainder of this school year, the summer and the fall. We're trying to get a leg up and not find ourselves, at the last minute having to make plans. We're anticipating as much as we can what the fall will look like. I'll talk about that in a second. I'll have some help from 2 stakeholder groups that'll be meeting next week. Looking ahead, I can tell you, as I've already told the district's personnel, it is my vision to bring back all personnel in early May, at which time I believe that the vaccination program will have made its way, hopefully, to the arms of all the educators in my circle. It's also my hope that a confluence of the factors, including warmer weather, which could lead to a decline in community spread, which may, more outdoor activities, and of course, the prevalence of the vaccine will make it safer for all to come back. We will, of course, continue to operate a virtual learning program for so many of the students, as I pointed out earlier, approximately 70% who have chosen to learn from home. There are some ideas to next year parallel our in-person program with some kind of a virtual strand. I serve on a task force that will report to the governor. I represent the central region of New Jersey on behalf of superintendents that is in the midst of doing this planning on a state level. And there are strong indications coming out of Trenton that there'll be some kind of requirement, directive to at least offer some kind of virtual program for kids who want to remain home. Frankly, I mean, if I can just put my visionary hat on for a couple of minutes, I think virtual learning is here to stay on some level. I don't think it'll replace in-person instruction. In other words, I don't foresee flipped learning is going to become the thing, and that all of a sudden we're going to be, halving the number of hours our kids are coming to school. I think there's nothing that replaces interpersonal relationships in person during the school year. But I do think that there's benefits to virtual learning for some kids, as the individual who commented on one of those slides pointed out. Some kids have actually found a way to be very successful, more successful than they have previously in the virtual environment. So that's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions or comments from the board? If not, we do have a presentation from the auditor, and I know that's next up. So I guess I'll pass the torch to Linda. Do you want to introduce the auditors? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Michelle has a question or a comment. Go ahead, Michelle.
I do. Thank you. I just wanted to ask how the survey was distributed, and if the rest of the board is happy with the amount of respondents, because to me it feels like a decent response rate for a survey, but I would have liked to have heard from as many, people as we have in the district.
Well, we did send home paper copies to those we have on a list who require such or who've requested that. And then, via Facebook and email, of course. And I think I sent that to Honeywell. I do that often, acknowledging the survey. So, yeah, look, I mean, believe it or not, this was among the highest response rates we've received since I've started surveying people during the pandemic. Just to give you an example, I sent out a homework protocol and policy survey in last April. I got 292 responses. I can pull up some other surveys, but this is the reality that I've been forced to embrace. Child care needs assessment, I did that back in September, 154 responses. I put out what I refer to as the Highland Park School Reentry first week's feedback survey. This is when we were all remote. I sent a survey out to everybody. I got 385 responses. So this is unfortunately seemed to be right in there, if not more responses than we tend to get.
Oh, Michelle, in my long experience of being on school boards when surveys are done, this is probably the highest rate I've ever seen, by far. So I'm certainly pleased with the numbers we've gotten, and it was well represented. Chris, you had your hand up.
Yeah, there was another survey about the week after spring break, right? I mean, since you're talking about other surveys, I know there was some parental concern about the fact that it didn't ask whether people were remote or in person before. I mean, I'm sure this will come up later.
Yep, it might come up in public comment.
Yeah.
Look, I was told, I don't have that survey data. I did ask the principals to provide me percentages of students they anticipated would be traveling.
Mhm.
There was 20%.
Mhm.
I did ask them also to disaggregate that data and try to identify the kids who, based on the responses, were in person. So I'm going to assume that those numbers were of our in-person students. I have to be clear though, Chris, as I pointed out to several parents who emailed me their concerns about closing after spring break. We had a significant number of staff and faculty who are also going to be traveling. And that really precludes me from being able to operate in person. I do want to I make it very clear what my opinion is. I have no problem sharing it. I'm sure there's some people in this room will disagree with me. I don't feel it is my role to discourage people from traveling. I recognize that there's a need for some people to get out of Dodge, to break their routine, to find some kind of self-care during this time. And I'm not going to be the individual who encroaches on people's personal lives. And I'm sure there'll be disagreement about that, but that's my position. So unfortunately, that was a big part of my the influencing my decision making, Chris. It wasn't just the students. It was also a matter of not having enough substitutes to cover my classrooms.
And the numbers going up again. If I might add, I track the numbers for the district, and they are up. The numbers in New Jersey are up. The numbers in Middlesex County are up. The numbers in Somerset County are up. The number in New York is up. The number in our region is up. Between 10 and 15% additional cases of COVID in every one of these regions. And part of our job is to work towards the health and safety of students and teachers and community. And with the numbers going up in spring break and Passover and Easter, we are, I feel, and I think a lot of people feel, we're risking a third wave, vaccines notwithstanding.
It's unfortunate that other districts in the county, you'll be finding out soon. I have intimate knowledge of what my colleagues are doing. We'll be doing the same thing, and for the same reason. So it's a reality that's going to be facing a lot of school districts in the next week.
Other board members? Okay, with that.
Well, let me just, if I could just to respond to Michelle's comment, and I find it always frustrating to see numbers that are 30 or 35% and think of those as fantastic. It's frustrating because it obviously there are many people who don't reply. It, as Mark said, it is quite common, and obviously these numbers, these percentages are higher than we normally have, but it is frustrating. There are many reasons why some people are unable to or unwilling to fill out a survey and reply. I don't think we want to get into what those are during this board meeting, but I understand the frustration. I wish that those numbers were higher. I wish more people were more involved in surveys like this and otherwise, frankly. Right. So that's my thought.
Thank you, Rob. Linda, could you take over and introduce Mr. Colantano?
Sure. Well, I'm not sure whether I'm introducing Mr. Weiss or Mr. Colantano or both. We have actually 4 members of the staff of Bedard, Kurowicki and Company, CPAs, with us tonight. Mr. Jonathan Weiss is the lead auditor on the district visit. And I'm not sure of his title in the firm. Mr. Colantano has been, his firm, Bill Colantano, auditors, was with us for several years. And they merged a few years ago with BKC. And he's been giving the report for years. I don't know. I think they're going to be giving a combined report. Is that correct, John?
Yes.
Okay. We also have with us Daniel Cooper. He was very involved in the district's in on-site in the district's audit, and Mr. Mike Holk, who is a partner in the firm as well. I'm going to let Jonathan Weiss take over. He's going to present the report with possibly some help from his counterparts.
Thanks so much for the kind words, Linda. And as always, it's our pleasure to come before the board and give the results of the audit for the past year. So what I'm going to do is jump right into things. And we're going to start off with our CAFR financial facts handout. We're going to start off with revenues and expenditures. And the first thing I want to talk about with revenues is the difference between this year and last year. There's an increase of a little over $1 million, $1,085,321.
Excuse me, can I interrupt for a second? Dr. Taylor, would you like to share that document?
I can. Give me why don't you begin and then I'll pull it up.
Sure, we're on the financial facts page. Looks just like this. Yep. And we're talking about revenues right now. And as we noted earlier, there's a difference of $1,085,321, an increase between this year and last year. And the two numbers that stuck out at me as I was preparing for this was the increase in the general fund tax levy, which was planned for during the budget process for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. In addition to that, there was all the primary driver of the increase is the increase in state aid. The increase in state aid was the result of the district receiving extraordinary special education cost aid that was significantly higher than last year. And one of the things I always talk to districts about is when you have extraordinary special education cost aid, you have what comes with it. And in this case, it's the increased cost of special education in-house students, as well as an increase in tuition costs for students being sent out of district, which we'll go over in a bit more detail when we jump into expenditures. We have a couple of other notes on the side that I'll leave you to go over and review at your leisure. But unless anybody had any questions, comments, concerns, I was going to jump into expenditures. Okay, moving on to expenditures. The difference between this year and last year is a decrease of $224,697. In a lot of the districts that I've made presentations for and that we visited during the audit season have a similar thing. Expenditures are down primarily due to COVID-19 related closures and reduction in operations. As noted earlier, when the district getting extraordinary aid, that extraordinary special education cost aid is driven by expenditures. In this case, special education expenditures, and my eyes go right to sending tuition. There was an increase of $343,000, or an 11% increase comparing this year to last year. One of the other things that caught my eye, and one of the things we look for as auditor, is trends. And the trend that I've seen in almost all my districts is that pupil transportation should be down for most districts. And I'm happy to say that it's down for Highland Park as well, to the tune of a little under $400,000, $397,844. Now, one of the things that we include on here that can vary from year to year to year is capital outlay. If we go towards the bottom, capital outlay was $235,750 for 1920. only about $60,000 in 2018, 2019. And if we really want to dive into the details and look at 2010, 2011, we can see a $920,264. That appropriation line is for things that aren't necessarily going to happen every year. Your capital projects are going to vary based on what your district's needs are. In the case of 1920, a lot of the expense was for cameras in the door system. And looking at 2010, 2011, probably had a lot of construction stuff going on that you were handling in-house. So those things can vary from year to year to year, depending on what your situation is. Any questions, comments, concerns before I jump into fund balance? Okay, on to slide 2 of our presentation. And we're going to jump into fund balance. Whoa.
Sorry about that.
Okay, that's quite all right.
Keeps trying to push you out.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to let my friend behind me go into the details of fund balance when we get a little further into our presentation, but I do want to give you a view from 1,000 feet up. Overall surplus increased by about $1 million, $953,000. Now, the biggest increases were going to be the increase for the amount designated for subsequent years' expenditures. So that surplus is being taken away from you as a budget revenue in order to meet your obligations as far as appropriations go for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. There's a bit of an increase in unrestricted fund balance. That's based on the prior year, mostly from the extraordinary aid increase that we talked about earlier in our presentation. Also, a bit of an increase in the amount available for maintenance reserve. And when I look between now and 10 years ago, the thing that jumps out at me is first off, the increase in the capital emergency and maintenance reserve balances compared to 10 years ago. It's up about $300,000. And you want to try and try and keep money going into those reserves because bad things can and do happen. You want to leave yourself the provisions to be able to confront anything that may come in your path. And you can't think of everything, but having this money set aside will alleviate some of the burdens of some costs that are associated specifically with the maintenance and capital reserve projects. Also, the amount designated for subsequent years' expenditures has gone up pretty big compared to that time. And that's something Bill's going to drill down on a little bit further on into our presentation. Any questions, comments before I move on to some of our graphs? Okay, I'm going to keep moving forward then. And we're going to talk about revenues and the tax rate. Now, when I look at the revenue pie chart, if the first image I see is an image that looks like a green Pac-Man, that means that a lot of the revenue stream is coming in from real estate taxes. And as we can see, almost $30 million of the revenue stream is coming in from real estate taxes. A little bit from the state, even less from federal sources, and a tiny bit from miscellaneous income. Now, if we scroll down a little bit to the tax rates, I want my friend behind me here to walk the board through what's going on with tax rates over the last 10 years. So Bill, if you wouldn't mind chiming in.
Okay, I'm going to be referring to 2 pages in the audit that I'm sorry to say we don't have available for viewing right now. The exhibit that you're seeing as far as the bar graph, is that a bar graph? No, it's a, what's the term we use for that? Or it's showing where the $4 is going up to $5 for the school taxes. One of the things that generates a tax rate is the assessed values of the community. Highland Park has not had a revaluation of real property in a number of years. So what's happened is, as far as the town is concerned, the assessed values of Highland Park are $582 million. But the county says the assumed assessed values of Highland Park are $1,409,000,000. Now, what that basically means is for every 1 cent on the tax rate, you have to spend $47,000. No, I'm sorry, $58,000 is an impact of 1 cent on the tax rate at your present assessed values. If it's the equalized values that the county says Highland Park is worth, that would be $140,000 basically for 1 cent on a tax rate. So your $4 in tax rate or $5 for school purposes is overstated by a considerable amount of money, and it looks a lot worse than it really is because the home values in town are understated. And the jump that you're seeing in taxes is much more than it really is because, again, the low dollar amount of assessments, instead of the $140,000 increase, it's a $40,000 increase, a $58,000 increase. Also not shown there, and it's a little bit misleading. I'm referring to the 2 pages that are not shown. They're going to be pages 114 and 113 in the audit reports. But the tax rates for the school purposes have gone up 91 cents in the last 10 years. The town is up $1.56. The school is up 91 cents. The town's up 60 cents, and the county's up only 5 cents. What's not shown is the fact that the school is up 21% over that 10-year period of time. The school, or the county, is up 5%, and the municipality is up 35%. So the biggest percentage increase really by the 3 components is the municipal tax rate of being increased at 35% over the last 10-year period of time. Our increase at 21% is within the amount that's allowable by the state of New Jersey as the amount of you're allowed to increase school taxes by. If you were paying taxes on a true value of as far as the county's concerned, the total tax rate would be $3.44 as opposed to the $8.41 that we're showing. You'd still be paying the same amount of taxes, but the valuations on your property will be considerably different. So I guess in conclusion, what I'm saying is it's misleading. The tax rates are high, but the assessed values are low. So you can't compare Highland Park to one of your neighboring communities by just looking at tax rates. You need the numbers behind the tax rates. Okay, John, back to your presentation, unless anybody has a question.
Questions, comments, concerns, anyone before we move on?
I guess I still don't understand how inflation figures here. What's the real adjusted for inflation increase?
Well, it hasn't been, I haven't done the adjustment at all. I'm just giving you actual numbers right now. The state's allowing you, I guess, basically the number you're referring to as far as an inflationary increase of 2% a year. We've shown, or that's exhibit that I'm referring to, page 114 in the audit, will be a 21% increase over that 10-year period of time, which is what the state's allowing. So that's close to the inflationary increase that you're talking about.
Yeah, it just looks to me like if you adjust for inflation, that there hasn't been any increase at all.
That's pretty much true.
And for 2 of the last 4 years, the tax rate for the schools has gone down. For those on the board to understand, if you look at your tax bill for last year, for 2020, and your tax bill for 2019, you'll see that your actual taxes that you paid if you own a property has gone down. And that's due to the tax to the schools. And Michelle, you had your hand up.
Yes, I'm going to stop the video. I wanted to ask how, I guess this is a public relations type concern, but I wanted to ask how, you know, the municipality is raising taxes 31% over 10 years, and how somehow, you know, the blame seems to always fall on us at the schools. How is that? Why is that? And how do we stop that?
Good question. If you look at the chart that's on the screen right now, the biggest part of your taxes is school taxes, and there's no denying that. The total taxes that are levied in Highland Park, 61% of them are school taxes. So it's easy to blame the school for the large increase, or the total amount of your school taxes being the biggest portion. But the amount of increase is not the greatest at the school level.
Michelle, I would say that this stint for me on the school board is started in 2016. And certainly at that point, so I wasn't on the board before that in 2015, 14, as you were. Before I came on the board, there certainly was hostility about from all segments of the community about the levels of tax increases. So if, for instance, you look on this chart from 2013 to 2015, there were large increases in the actual tax dollars people paid for schools. In 2016, we made it a goal to visit people, explain the taxes, and that level of hostility, as far as I'm concerned, as finance chair for that period of time between 2016 and 2021, has virtually disappeared, with one or two exceptions of people who say, you know, my taxes are very high, my taxes are increasing every year. They went up 10% last year. Well, they didn't. You know, they went down between 2019 and 2020. They went down between 2016 and 2017. Those are the facts if you look at your tax bill. So I haven't seen the hostility, and I don't think the board has seen that hostility. I think we've done a good job. We've put a lot of money into keeping that tax rate down. Linda has worked with our bond officials that bond firm that we use to refinance our bonds at ever lowering rates. The borough has brought on new housing over the past 10 years. That's lowered the actual cost, hasn't lowered the rate, but it's lowered the cost. That's why we're getting these lower rates. And then we are being very careful. So while there may be a few folks out there saying this, it simply isn't so, you know, that the schools are a problem. One issue, of course, is, as Bill just said, it's 61% of the taxes are applicable to the schools. So people look at that as an easy target, but it isn't much of a target when it hasn't gone up much. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. I really appreciate the work that you and the Finance Committee have done on that. And I will certainly be bookmarking your answer to my question anytime I face any of that hostility.
Thank you.
On social media, etc.
Well, I don't know about social media, but thank you very much. Bill, you could take back over.
Actually, I'm going to give it up to John again.
Okay.
I'll be back later.
Okay.
Okay, gang, moving on. We're going to take a few minutes and talk about expenditures. And we talked about them a little bit on the onset, but I want to talk about our pie chart first, because we're gonna talk about our expectation again. And when I get prepared for these presentations and we put everything to a color like we have here, my expectation is that this graph ought to be completed about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way with green, blue, and purple wedges. The green wedges being regular instruction or other instruction. The blue wedges, starting with the dark blue color, is sending tuition out of the district. Light blue color are student and instruction related services, our nurses, librarians, child study team, the guidance counselors. and the purple portion, which is employee benefits. I'm happy to say my expectations met, especially when you consider the light peach colored wedge towards the upper left-hand part that's a special revenue fund, because a lot of those costs are going to be for instruction and maybe a bit for employee benefits. So as I go down, I said, okay, my expectation is met for this year, but how does it line up for the last 10 years? And that's when I'm going to go down a little bit. And I'm going to look at the bar graph right below our pie chart. I'm going to line these up. And as we can see from the green portions of our bar graph, things are relatively steady, especially since about 2013 or so. 2013 to 2020, a little bit of an increase, but things are pretty steady. The blue wedges, both for tuition and the instruction support services, ticking up a bit, especially since the 2017 fiscal year. And the same with employee benefits. That's been ticking up since about 2016 and has been up 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And Highland Park is not the only district where benefit costs are ticking up. It's a reality that a lot of districts are having to face with health benefit costs and things of that nature. Any questions, comments, concerns before we move on to surplus? Oh, gosh, someone's got her hand.
Michelle?
Yes, me again. I just want to comment on the employee benefits portion. And you mentioned, Mr. Weiss, that this was directly related to health benefits and health insurance.
Benefits is the primary driver of this, yes.
Okay, so that if we had perhaps the same type of healthcare that my cousins in Italy had, perhaps we could completely delete that from our expenditures. I mean, would that be right? Would my guess be right about that?
It's a union problem.
Yeah, there are saying, and we're talking about another country and another way of handling things economically.
Yes.
I'd be a bit wary about hazarding an opinion one way or the other without looking at everything.
Okay, I mean, this is just my my way of saying that the more we can pass off to the federal government as far as expenditures for basic necessities like healthcare, the better off our communities are. And so that is my comment.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, we have another question from the audience. Okay.
Just a question going forward. Will the changes in the health benefits from the state changes, will that impact where our numbers of costs start going down?
Yeah, I can answer that. They will go down, Marilyn. They've already gone down since that's been implemented. We're one of the few districts that have seen substantial changes, as many of our staff, I think about half our staff have taken the new plan. The new plan is substantially cheaper for us, probably saves us 10%. It's not all the staff. So yes, the new plan is very good and will help us. Gentlemen, it's running late and we have a lot of audience here. Do we have an idea how much more we'll be doing?
Not much more. I'm going to run through surplus in a second, and then Bill's going to finish everything off for us.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is surplus, and this time I'm going to work from the bottom up. So we're going to start down a little further down to our pie chart. Now, in terms of what surplus is allocated for, a lot of it is restricted for one reason or another. A lot of it is assigned, if we look at the bottom right-hand corner, 1.728 million assigned in this case for the budget for the subsequent year. A lot of it's restricted in reserves, the capital reserve, the emergency reserve a little bit, and the maintenance reserve. In addition to it, the big red wedge is for capital projects, and that is extremely restricted to a specific type of capital project. Now, as we work our way up a bit, we're going to line these up in a bar graph the same way we did with expenditures. If we want to move up a bit, I'm sorry, other direction. And the trend I picked up on here is not the totally dark blue wedge or the totally light blue wedge, but the one right in the middle. And it's right in the middle of the bar graph, conveniently enough. And that's the amount of surplus that's been anticipated as a budget revenue. And at this point, I'm going to hand things off to Bill, and we're going to go down to the next page of our presentation, where we're going to go into the numbers on an Excel spreadsheet and talk about surplus.
Do you want me to cut out?
Oh, I think we want to go down one more page after.
One more, Scott.
One more. There we
go.
And I think we want to move that one a little bit more to the right if we could, because we're cutting off on June 30, 2019.
You know what? Let me just reduce it in size.
Good.
Okay, now we're talking.
Perfect.
All right, Bill.
Nice job. This is kind of meaningful. John just indicated that if we went back a few years when I was making the presentations, the $3,247,000 that we're showing in surplus at June 30th, 2020, $1 million roughly more than we had a year ago. But as soon as I tell you how much money you have in surplus, you have to take away three numbers pretty much. Of that money, we used $467,000 in capital reserve for capital projects in this year's budget, the budget we're presently working under. We used $48,000 for maintenance reserve to offset costs in the budget. And we also anticipated as taxpayer relief, $1,726,000 of that total amount. So the money we have at June 30th has now been substantially reduced. And one of the concerns that we had mentioned earlier at a finance committee meeting that the surplus in Highland Park makes me a bit nervous, only because of the fact that we have 4 aging buildings, property or the athletic fields have to be worked on and things of that nature. So we may not have adequate money available in surpluses. But I do also want to indicate that over the years, the Board of Education has given back to the taxpayers. Included within the body of this exhibit are numbers that we used for the last 8 years for the maintenance and capital reserve projects. Money has been taken out of the reserves in order to offset the cost that the taxpayers don't have to pay because we had the money in reserve. A total of $2,280,000 has been applied to the budgets over those last 8 years, which is roughly 39 cents. Also in tax relief, which is going to be on the line that says budget appropriation tax relief, that's it right there where the arrow is going. That total is $7,033,000 over the last 8 years, which is over 121 cents on the tax rates. We've given back a considerable amount of money, but my concern is maybe we've given back too much because it's difficult to replenish surplus. The only reason this year went up $1 million is because of the COVID activity as far as the amount of cost that we saved pretty much over that last year period of time. A lot of savings were there. I don't know if we can generate the same type of savings out of this year's budgets. It's difficult, but this particular tax year, using $1,700,000 out of surplus to offset taxes in the current year that you're working under, it's something that can't be repeated every year. So it's really difficult. Surplus has been given back to the taxpayers, but it's hard to replenish, very hard. Any questions created by that one?
Well, Bill, we're well aware of that, and we've had this discussion before. And we certainly know we have some capital projects that need doing, and we will accomplish them. And we can't, while you say, and correctly and happily, that we've given back $7 million to taxpayer relief, we can't raise the percentage of taxation above 2%. And so we don't have really any choice. And so the money has to be found, or the programs are destroyed, and we're not going to let programs be destroyed. So that's really the bitter facts from our seats. As members of the public who've volunteered for these unpaid positions, we have to face that, and we have to do something about it. And here is where we are. Do any board members have any questions? And do you, John and Bill, do you have more, or is this the end of the report?
I think we're in a good spot to cut off for the night. The only other thing, there was one other bar graph that goes over enrollment, but that only illustrated that enrollment's been pretty flat for the last 6 or 7 fiscal years.
Well, thank you all gentlemen so much.
Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Yeah, and everyone should know, we're not only getting this visit, but we had a multi-100-page auditor's report. This is serious business. And we have, in effect, a $40 million establishment here. So it requires, for the public and the board that are here, this requires serious business. And I really appreciate the work you've done from the moment I started on the board and first met you, Bill, and your team. It's been really wonderful, and it's really helpful to us. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for the good words.
Thank you.
Appreciate it so much. Okay, and we'll see you next year.
Okay. Have a good night, everyone.
You too. Thank you. Okay, let us move on. It is getting late. So we're up to public comment. As we know, we've moved public comment to the beginning of the meeting, which isn't such a beginning right now because we've had a lot to do tonight of board business. This is our first public comment period. After the board goes through our committee reports, but no voting tonight, there'll be a second public comment period. Let me read the comment, the public comment note, and then I'll make a few comments about it myself. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Board policies 164 and 167 establish and regulate the right of the public to participate in public meetings. So first of all, raise your hand if you want to speak. Give your name and your Highland Park address, please, your full address. I don't think legally it has to be a Highland Park address. I ask you for this first comment period to keep your public comment down to 3 minutes so that we can move on to our board business. You'll have another opportunity after the board business to give public comments if you have more to say. And with that, I'm going to call upon Carol McCarty. So if you would unmute yourself and you could put your video on if you care to.
Sure, I can. I was having some trouble with audio, so I thought turning off the video might make it easier,
Okay.
but I can turn it on.
No,
Hi, I'm Carol. Yeah, I'm Carol McCarty. My address is 43 Harrison Avenue. And I just wanted to ask about the plan for September. We've talked a lot about what's happening right now with going back to in-person instruction. And by the way, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who put forth all the effort to make in-person instruction happen. As a parent, I really appreciate that. And I want everyone to know that. But I have to tell you that one comment that Dr. Taylor made about not feeling like it was his responsibility to discourage travel during spring break, I disagree with that. And that sort of will lead to my comments about September. Dr. Taylor, you're the leader of the Highland Park Public Schools. And so I think that it is your responsibility to lead us in a direction that not only gets us back to school in person, but gives everyone a can-do attitude to make school happen again, in-person school happen. When you make statements like you'll do your best, or we may be looking at a relatively normal start to September, it doesn't give any attainable goals. It doesn't give me as a parent faith that school is going to resume in September for my child. And I really do believe that it is possible. There are districts in our area that were able to make in-person instruction happen at times that Highland Park was completely remote. And so I would really appreciate it as a parent if you could lead us forward with a can-do attitude. We can get back to school in person, full-time for everyone in September. And it would really be great if you could outline what goals you need to attain in order to make that happen, and report to us parents on a regular basis on where you are with those goals. What does need to get done in order for us to be back in school in September? How can we make that happen? How can we all move forward together with a positive attitude, open schools safely, but effectively and confidently? If you could give us those goals, what needs to get done, where you are in making those goals happen, it would be really great. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Scott, you don't have to, but do you want to comment at all?
I think Carol's points are very valid. And when I'm prepared and the leadership team is prepared to present actionable goals and our plans, which I believe I can make presentable within 3 weeks, maybe sometime after spring break at one of our April board meetings, I'll do so. And but I'll take my cues from Carol and be sure that the goals are concrete. And if I could engage the community in support, I will. As I said earlier, the team is meeting every week to brainstorm and plan, and we do have some goals already in mind. I'm just not prepared to share them right now, but I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Rossner was next, and then Keith Presti, please.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Glad to see that Irving and Bartle and the Perseverance Pod are back in 5 days a week. So thank you. I think that's a step in the right direction.
We need to get name and address. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. God, I always forget.
All right. Yes. It's Robert Rosener, 22 Harrison Avenue in Highland Park. So I wanted to just say that I was deeply disappointed in what I'm calling the arbitrary and unreasonable decision to cancel wrestling this year. Keep in mind that all sports are voluntary. Nobody has to participate if they're uncomfortable. I think the coaches wanted to do it. I know many of the kids wanted to do it. One of you have publicly stated that your child is participating in a sport. You were apprehensive at first, but decided to allow it, probably recognizing how important it was for your child's well-being as well as your family's well-being, perhaps. Keep in mind also that the state is allowing wrestling. Other public K through 12s are allowing it and doing it. Private schools are allowing wrestling. I'm just angry that you all can make rational decisions for your families, but you foreclosed our abilities to make similar decisions for our families. I find it unfair and elitist. You state we should follow science and make data-driven decisions, but I don't think you're doing that. If science and data were driving it, how would the state and so many other schools be allowing and doing wrestling? I think that some of your decision-making is based on fears or conversations with unnamed colleagues and health experts whose experience and credibility are unknown to the members of the public who expressly asked for that information. Your decision essentially has prevented a large group of people from doing and participating in something that they love. And it's just further harming our wrestling kids in a year of lots of disappointments. I think you should offer as much programming and full-time support as absolutely possible and let people make their own decisions. And I'll just close, as I've said before, again, my deep disappointment with this decision and many of the boards and the superintendent's decisions with respect to COVID response does not mean I fail to see your dedication, your hard work, and your commitment to this town. I thank you for that, your time and effort and dedication. I just strongly disagree with many of your decisions in this area, and I would urge you to make better decisions. And that's it. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Russner. Keith Presti, please.
Hi, everybody. Keith Presti, president of the Highland Park Education Association, speaking on behalf of our members. Actually, just as a side note, thank you for the audit presentation, and I am glad to hear that both our members and the district are saving some money under Chapter 44, the new healthcare insurance plan, so that's good to hear. First, we'd like to thank Abby Stern Cardinal and the other dedicated individuals who are helping obtain vaccination appointments for staff and community members. We are very grateful for your efforts. Second, the HPEA and our members are concerned about the recent increase in new COVID cases being reported in Highland Park. Initially, the 7-day totals after February 14th were encouraging. Over the past 7 days, however, our numbers have risen well above the threshold originally set for in-person learning. We understand and share the desire to keep continuity for both students and staff. The current numbers show that we must not forget that COVID-19 is still a very real threat. With safety as a priority, we must remain vigilant and adapt our mitigation strategies to match the trending realities of this pandemic. We are hopeful that increased community transmissions will not transfer into our school buildings. If we do, we expect that the district will transition back to virtual instruction for the safety of all staff and students. Being that our current numbers place us well into the red zone as defined by the CDC, we ask that the district remain steadfast in its commitment to implementing the CDC recommended mitigation strategies, most specifically the universal and correct use of masks and maintaining at least 6 feet of physical distance. With new cases on the rise in our community, this is not the time to relax. We must strengthen our practices to ensure safe learning environments and work sites for our entire school community. In relation, we urge the superintendent and the Board of Education to verify the ability to maintain 6 feet of distance in each space and classroom before committing to adding additional in-person students. We would also like to applaud Dr. Taylor's continuing efforts to create a balance where none exists, and for his decision to provide virtual instruction the week following spring break. Many districts across the state are following the same virtual learning post-spring break timeline. This was absolutely the right call given the current conditions and will undoubtedly prevent exposure and transmissions that may have resulted from out-of-state travel. As of Friday, the world death toll from this virus stands at 2.63 million. Over 530,000 of those lost were people in the United States. New Jersey has lost 23,737 citizens. These are staggering and upsetting numbers. No one wants to be 100% back in classrooms more than our teachers and educational support professionals. Our members, the superintendent, the Board of Education, administrators, the community, and the association have thus far done an excellent job ensuring the safety of all and prioritizing the continued education of our students. The finish line is in sight. Unfortunately, we are not out of the woods yet. Let's continue to work together to finish out this year as safely as possible while continuing to offer the best possible education for our students. And I thank you for your time tonight.
Keith, thank you very much. I just want to say that I'm very concerned about the numbers that are increasing as well. I'm concerned about the holidays. I'm concerned about people letting their guard down. There's a lot of public in this meeting tonight. Tell your friends, do it yourself, be safe, be careful, because it's still out there. People are still getting sick. My own Pardon me, let me hang up this phone.
He'll be back.
My own cousin, who's a cancer survivor, just spent 10 days in the hospital and 10 days in rehab with COVID-19. And a year ago, she would have died. She barely survived. So everyone take precautions, get the vaccine, get the vaccine, get the vaccine when you can. And I ask that our educators get the vaccine. Do what you can. Talk to Abby's group, get the vaccine, and then we can all be back in the classroom. I plan to tour the schools. I've had both shots as of 3 or 4 weeks ago. I plan to tour the schools. You know, I'll wear a mask. I'll be serious about it. But it's time. It's time that we take this seriously, because it is serious. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Anybody else who want to give public comment now? Carol, I'm happy to call on you again, but I don't want to call on you twice before someone else is on once. But go ahead. You have Rob Scott. You haven't spoken yet. Carol, I'll call you after Rob Scott. Go ahead, Rob.
My name is Rob Scott. I'm at 25 South 2nd Avenue in Highland Park. And Mark, I'm speaking just because you inspired me with your get the vaccine, get the vaccine, get the vaccine. A colleague of me said a long time ago, the scientists in the white coats are going to come in like the cavalry and save us. And I mean, that's the vaccine. We need to get the vaccine. But it's also science, as has now been pointed out, that the cases are actually going up in our community right now. And that's not the direction we want to go. And so what I wanted to say, well, so many parents and folks are in the room. Today, March 15th, eligibility changed and a whole new set of conditions were brought in that make people vulnerable. So there's a lot of people that are now eligible for the vaccine that weren't yesterday. And this includes many, many, many high school students. My guess is that of our current sophomores, juniors, and seniors, there may be 35, 40% of the students who are now eligible to get the vaccine. And the Pfizer vaccine is available for kids 16 and over. So if we as a community really, really, really want to lick this, get the vaccine. And I just wanted to point out that kids in the schools can get the vaccine now. And I hope maybe that Dr. Taylor will consider some messaging to that effect, to let people know that they can but they can get it.
Yep, absolutely.
Rob, thank you. I wanted to add to that. I don't know if Abby is still here. I attended Abby's last meeting where she got lots of volunteers together. I kind of volunteered to let a lot of people know, which is one of the things this group is doing. And as it turns out, if you need a shot and you need to get the shot in Middlesex County, it's very difficult. There's tremendous demand. If you can travel 45 minutes away, an hour away, there are places that the HP Vaccine Help Group, an hour from here, can get you the vaccine in a day or 2 or 3. So if indeed, Rob, you're completely right. If you're a high school student and you can get a ride or you drive and you can get there, you can get the shot. So this is just so important. And I have adult children who when New York opened up, they both live in Brooklyn. When New York opened up a bit, I said, guys, you got to get the shot. You have, conditions. They're not the worst conditions in the world, but you qualify. And they said, let's get it to somebody who needs it more. I said, everyone needs it more. Go get the shots. And they finally did. And now that we're able to see them. So, and they can travel around a little bit more. So, and they're safe. So this is really important. This is really, 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 really important. If we're going to get this, and Carol, I'll call on you in 1 second. You asked about getting the schools open in September. One of the ways we get the schools open in September is for people to wear masks, socially distance, and get those vaccinations. And then we'll be able to open the schools, because if we get a 3rd wave or a 4th wave and a 5th wave, we're not opening so quickly. I think we will. I don't mean to be negative. I'm the most positive person. I'm the glass not half full, but all full all the time. I believe we're going to be open, but we really have to be careful and be serious. So Carol, please take the mic.
I'll tell you something. Some of the things that I just heard were so incredibly hypocritical because all of you are saying how important it is for us to be careful and for us to be safe, and the numbers are going up. And yet the policy that was communicated by the survey that Dr. Taylor sent out was basically, who wants to travel outside of this area during spring break? Oh, lots of people, we better go remote then. So you know what? I have an older daughter that goes to a private school in this area, and I have not left this area because I have been responsible to that school community. Because if that school community found out that my child traveled outside of the area, she would be required to quarantine. So everybody needs to walk the walk and talk the talk in this community then, because if you want this community to be safe, if you want these schools to get open, then we shouldn't make it okay for people to travel outside of the area, which then means that everyone has to quarantine to make it safe for the 30% of the kids who are in person. So everybody needs to get the vaccine, absolutely, as soon as they can. And everyone needs to social distance, and everyone needs to wear their masks, absolutely. But we all need to take responsibility to our communities to do what's right. And if we're just going outside of our community to have fun, then that's not responsible in my mind. And so Dr. Taylor, again, I will urge you, you are the leader of this school community. Lead us and say the things that people need to do. Everybody doesn't want to get on a soapbox for telling people that they shouldn't travel, but you want to get us on a soapbox to tell everybody what all the other things they need to do to keep us safe. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. Thank you.
Mark, I will say one thing. I hope there isn't a perception that my leadership team and I are sitting on our butts, not thinking a dime about what we're going to be doing in the fall. I'm just not prepared to share all those details with you yet until I have something that's actionable and concrete. And I'm not just going to pontificate and tell you conjecture and say, oh yeah, we're going to open up in September. And then come September, we have another round of this pandemic. I've got plans, working through them with my leadership team. We're working extremely hard, long days, and we're focusing a lot of our attention on the spring, the summer, and the fall, beyond all the managerial duties that we're doing currently. And by the way, we're also working very hard just to maintain the initiatives that we've been putting in place, like assessment reform, restorative practices, promoting equity. We're doing all the things that we did pre-pandemic on top of all these things. I have plans. When I'm ready to share them with the group, I will. And that'll likely be in about 3 weeks.
Scott, thank you. Michelle, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that we're getting conflicting messages, it sounds like to me. And, allowing children to do sports and other things, or not allowing them to wrestle since there's no way to social distance, and saying that we should leave it up to, the parents to take that risk. And then also asking us for the community to be community minded and to demand that grown-ups and their family not travel to do important things on their time off, whatever they may be. Those two things sound like they're in conflict to me. And I think that I just wanted to say out loud in public that I do think it's very important that we all talk about the way that this has been a learning time for all of us, and that we're trying our best. And that I do think Dr. Taylor has tried to do the impossible in reopening, and delaying the reopening. And I really do believe that Mark has done a great job of communicating with the public about why those things are happening from the board perspective and also from Dr. Taylor's perspective. So I just wanted to say that it's not one parent that's yelling that's getting all the attention, that we are really, I think, as a board, trying to hear everyone and give everyone what we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you for the compliment. Chris, please take the floor.
Well, very, very quickly, is this also going to be a problem at Memorial Day? I mean, there's a break there too, right? We could have the same quarantine get that, requirement at that point.
Well, at this point, we only have a 3 or 4 day weekend that'll comprise Memorial Day. I had to call snow day, so I'm only going to be giving the community back likely 1 day. So I believe it's Friday. We'll have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday off. I have to go back to the calendar. But Chris, it's a much shorter period of time. What I'm anticipating is people are going to be traveling out the metropolitan area, other states, other countries. We've been told by, especially at Barno here, we have several families will be taking their kids to travel internationally to see family who they haven't seen in a year for the first time overseas. I doubt they can manage to do that in a 3 or 4 day weekend.
Well,
yes, please.
So the discussion about this, when we talk about individual families and small groups traveling distances where I'm not certain that it's been proven exactly what location is more or less safe in terms of their travel. But as far as small groups, families traveling, shouldn't they be the ones to have we thought about that some people should be doing the quarantining, but not the entire school community? Is that something that's been considered?
Yeah, I have. And if you just give me 1 second, I'll respond quickly and then pass the torch. Rob, one of the challenges that my colleagues, particularly a couple in North Jersey who I speak with regularly, have confronted it, and I haven't, as far as I know, I haven't dealt with this issue as prevalently as some of my colleagues have so far, is people not either completing our screening form, which indicates that their children traveled out of state or internationally because they just didn't get to it. Or I hate to say it, but not sometimes people aren't truthful. I'd like to, I'm a half glass full guy about people, but I'm sorry, but that's just the reality. My colleague, LaSousa, the superintendent of Chatham, actually called out his community for that problem when he opened up early on. So that's one issue. And again, I have to point out that we have significant number of personnel who'll be going. I just got a text, by the way, from a colleague. I had to put it away because I'm here at a board meeting. But right now, a lot of my superintendent friends are very concerned about the personnel related issue. This isn't just a Highland Park thing. This is happening in 15 minutes away, going this way, North Brunswick, South Brunswick, some other districts as well. So I just need to clarify that. I mean, I've been getting a few emails from people saying, oh, these school districts are open and we're not. That's not the case. Sorry. As Keith pointed out earlier, a good number of school districts are doing the same thing we are because of the same reasons. So, Ann, I'm sorry.
Ann, it's yours. Go ahead, Ann.
No, it's fine, Scott. Thanks. I just wanted to echo Rob's concern. That would be my view if I were sort of in charge of the world. The problem that's a very difficult nut to crack is when staff travel. And I'm not making any kind of judgment here because everybody's been through a really hellacious year and people may need to get away, but we just don't have enough substitutes if staff have to quarantine for 10 days because they traveled. And if there's enough people that go away, we can't staff the school. So that's a big problem.
If I were in charge of the world, nobody could travel for 6 weeks. In fact, we'd all be on lockdown for 6 weeks. And then we could go back to our lives, which we could have done a year ago, I believe. And some countries did do. But I'm not, and you're not. We're just lowly boards of education officers. And we are trying to do the best we can. And our superintendent is trying to do the best he can. So it is late, and then we have not done our board business yet. So barring any other hands, which I do not see, we are on to curriculum and instruction report. Michelle, take the floor, please.
Thank you very much. I have a lengthy committee report, but I'm only going to read bullet points because of the time. And if anyone has any questions, I did forward everyone the meeting notes as well as an addendum from Supervisor Rodriguez. So please, read over that before next week and please send any questions through email. So we had our meeting on the 9th of March at 3:30, and it went until 5 p.m. So it's a very, very big meeting, and we actually didn't get to everything that we wanted to get to. The agenda includes 3 different items. The calendar adjustment is the first item. That's the calendar year for 2021-22. And we adjusted the calendar to acknowledge the Good Friday holiday, which was not taken off. The day Good Friday was, it's a holiday. It wasn't labeled as such, so that has been adjusted. The second item is a resolution to approve the Mandarin language course level 4 for grades 10 through 12. We have some students that are leveling up from level 3 and need a level 4. So that is what that resolution is to do. And the third item is a resolution to approve the school self-assessment for determining grades under the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights. At our meeting, we began talking about the high school and middle school grade recovery plan and proposal. Dr. Nicosia was there, Principal Caitlin Brady, and Chrissy Sukow. And they gave presentations on the proposal for grade recovery. Because of the pandemic and so many different changes, a lot of students did not receive grades that were reflective of their abilities and efforts. So there was a whole lot of white noise involved in their marking periods 1 and 2 that caused them to receive an incomplete for their core classes. So there is a proposal that 16 faculty members will be quote unquote hired as advisory mentor teachers to work either one-on-one or two-on-one with these students, 2 students to 1 teacher, that is. And they'll be working and giving them intensive, independent kind of guidance for an hour each week. And that hour is going to be negotiated between the teachers and the students to make it as effective as possible and as convenient as possible. So total 97 students are eligible for this plan since those students got in the incompletes for their core classes. But unfortunately, only 23 of the 97 are choosing to participate in this recovery process. And there are several reasons for that. There are options that are being given to the students that are going to be going through this process. And those options are listed in my committee notes. And then there's some other students that obviously did not want to participate in this grade recovery plan. So there's another option for them to work with the help of guidance counselors LeBianco and Young, and to use some of the CARES funding to provide new programming to meet their needs. And because these are individual students that have very specific individual needs, it's hard to go through all of that at the moment, but there's categories of students that these 2 guidance counselors have put together so that we can kind of put them into general boxes and try to see what those needs are a little more clearly. And so that's still in process. Further recommendations from the advisory committee were given, and those are also in my committee notes. Monique and I were both concerned about some of the issues that were raised, and we were excited to hear that there will be additional data coming about those students who got incomplete grades for their core classes. So we are anticipating some racial and socioeconomic data on those students, and Dr. Taylor did say that would be coming. The next part of our meeting, we spoke with Supervisor Michelle Rodriguez about leveled reading, and we talked about guided reading and other ways that our reading levels are organized in our schools, and generally in our Irving and Bartle schools. Also, there's more information to come, some of which came through Ms. Rodriguez just after I sent my committee notes to you all. So please check your emails for additional information on the MAP test for English language arts. And also there's a conversation that we are going to be approaching, hopefully to ensure that a lot of students that come to school with their own, family native languages that are, or language that is related to African American dialect, I believe that's what a linguist would say it is, that we give that language academic relevance when we do our reading assessments of students coming into our district. And that is a greater conversation that has just kicked off. And we did have that formally put on the curriculum committee agenda for our next meeting, April 13th at 3:30 p.m. So if you'd like to attend and be a part of that conversation, you are absolutely welcome. There are other topics that we did not get to, and those are also listed in my committee notes. And again, if there's any questions, please email me during the week and we can sort them out. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Michelle. You did cover the resolution on the calendar and the Mandarin as a new course. I'm sorry, I ran to get some water. Resolution to approve submission of the school self-assessment. Was that part of your report? Okay.
It was, but I didn't go into any detail, so you didn't miss anything.
Okay, all right.
Maybe Scott could give us the details if you're interested. It's one of the items that we didn't get deep into in our meeting.
Yeah, but the self-assessment report is in the board's folder, and
Okay.
it will be made public after the board approves it.
Okay, I'll read it. I did want to say that the majority or all of the money on this improvement program is applicable to CARES and future grants, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. So this is not coming out of budgeted money, and we should have, independent of what the auditor said earlier, they're not here to hear me say this. We should have, I believe, a reasonable surplus going forward from this year's funds. Plus, again, I'm going to talk about finance in a moment. So I'm going to call on myself.
I did.
Yeah,
I did mention the 5 programs that Scott. Okay, I just wanted to say
I heard
that it was covered. Yeah.
I just wanted to repeat that. So I'll do the finance and facilities. I'll be brief. We had 2 meetings. We had a meeting on March 10th. We talked about the budget. The budget is now balanced. We'll be having one more meeting on it and then presentations next month or in the next few weeks. There were lots of requests that either couldn't be made or by administration or were made and then were able to be used for money from this year or from CARES grant money. So we're doing much better than in usual years by far. Oh, and I wanted to thank Ann because Ann did the bulk of the committee report that I sent earlier today to everyone. There is the remaining CARES money or new CARES money. At the end of December, the Congress passed and Trump signed a new CARES bill. And we were allocated up to $1.1 million. So that we know. We don't know what we can use it for. If it's buying more masks, we have more masks than we could use for the next 10 years. So if that's what we get for it, and we can't fix facilities, then the money won't be given to us. So we have to see what they'll let us use it for. We've also read in the newspaper that the new money approved, just signed by President Biden, allocates us 2 million more. But again, that's quote CARES money for the pandemic. Again, we don't know what that's for. And you know what we're allowed to use that for. So we're discussing that. One of the questions is, can we use the money towards special ed, emotional learning input? Can we use that for some of the extras that are in the budget this year for our special education and social emotional learning types of things? If it is, then that could offset money we've put in the budget. So we had a long discussion about that. So that's what we did on March 10th. We reviewed the budget spreadsheets. This evening, for an hour before the regular meeting, we met with the auditor. What you saw was tonight was a very small part of the audit report and the audit discussion. It was an overview, but we went to much more depth. There is a multi-dozen page, it's probably not multi-hundred, but there's a very large report. We usually get it and it's like that thick of the auditors coming in and auditing everything here, which we are a public body, the school district. And we asked questions and discussed it. We in particular discussed possibly upgrading a position in the business office, because the business office definitely needs help. I've heard that for 4 years, both from Linda and from the auditors. So we've discussed that, and it's something we're likely to do. So with that said, does anyone have any questions about the reports? And then I'll go and go through our very few lists here. Okay. So item number 2 on the list is our bill list, our usual bill lists. Item 3 is travel and related expense reimbursements. Item 4 is substitute nursing. It's contracting at $60 an hour for an RN and $55 an hour for an LPN. And that's for the rest of the year. Item 5 is approval retroactively. This has been done already. So it's effective November 2019 through November 2020. It's the 1 year for an out-of-district displaced student going to South Brunswick. Item 6 is a new out-of-district placement for the new road school in Somerset at a cost of $55,663,000. Item 7 is bedside instruction for a child at a medical facility. And item 8 is something we should have done at the beginning of the year, which is to approve signatories, dual signatories for the food service fund account and the SUI, the unemployment trust account. And we'll vote on these plus surely some more at the next meeting. Any board members have any questions? Okay, Anne, I'm going to turn it over to you for personnel. Unmute, please.
There we go. Okay. Thanks, Mark. We met earlier today at 3 o'clock, full committee present. We discussed, and I shared the personnel minutes with you guys. It's in tonight's board meeting folder under personnel. We discussed several personnel that will be getting tenure this year, that are up for tenure this year, and Scott's recommendations. We discussed whenever there are personnel that might not be renewed, Scott gives us a heads up. So he gave us that heads up. There'll be more information presented to the board next month. We talked about a possible promotion for one employee. You'll see that in the notes. I'm not saying it out loud because it's obviously confidential. And we talked also about restructuring things in the business office, as Mark just pointed out. Let me move on to the meeting agenda. Everything is pretty self-explanatory, except for one thing, childcare leaves. We're delighted that Sam Perez, our new orchestra teacher, will be coming a little earlier than expected. Yay. Let's see, we have some stipends, translator, let's see, grade recovery teachers. I think Michelle touched on this a little bit. these are teachers that will be working with our students who had failing grades during the first 2 marking periods to help them find a way to demonstrate that they have mastery, a certain degree of mastery over the subject matter of the class that they failed. So these teachers will be acting as mentors, also working with the classroom teacher in whose class the student got the failing grade. And on number 12, sorry, that was number 12, there is an addition. It says for each personnel member, it says not to exceed 4 hours. It should say for each one, not to exceed 4 hours per week. That should be added to each line. So we'll amend that on the voting agenda. 14, family workshop. Let's see. I don't think there's anything else. We appreciate Christopher Bray and Joe Paul Castro volunteering to coach for us. That's number 18. And that is it for non-self-explanatory items.
Thank you, Anne. Any questions from board members? Chris?
Yeah, Dr. Taylor, do you have an idea how many weeks you're talking about for item 12? I mean, it comes about to $3,000 per week.
I don't. This is new. We're piloting. No other district we're aware of is doing something similar. So it's not something I can tell you I have a good timeline end date for. But I recognize, of course, that if we exceed a certain amount, at some point I'm going to have to approach the finance committee, give them a heads up, and ask for the go ahead to continue the program.
Well, this has to be covered by CARES money. It's
oh yes, yes, it will be. It will be. But
and we're likely to be awash in, Chris. We're likely to be awash in certainly in $1 million, but money we probably can't spend. You know, they're going to put shackles on us. So I'd rather do more of personally do more of this than less of it.
It just, I mean, the public is aware, I'm sure, that this like money that we're going to be awash in, this is not money we can give back to the taxpayer. It's very strictly limited for certain purposes, unfortunately. We can't just hire more teachers because we won't have the money next year.
Correct.
Et cetera. Just want to make sure that was clear to everyone.
Right. It's not about hiring more people because we hire them and then next year we have to fire them. So we can't, likely not to be able to use it very much for capital. We'll find that out. But we have to, in effect, find things to use this for. So this is and I don't mean to cut you off, Chris. Oh, well, actually, you finish. I wanted to say something about this program.
Well, I just maybe then we should add that it's funded by CARES, just in the budget item, just to clarify that.
I mentioned it during my curriculum report, but maybe it wasn't clear in finance. I don't know. But yes, it's all CARES money.
Let's get that on the agenda so people can.
Let's put, I don't know where to put it, whether curriculum personnel or possibly finance, but it wouldn't be in finance yet because we're not approving the money. But if we would put it in personnel, that we're going to be funding it from CARES money for the regular voting meeting, that would be good. And I did want to say about that program that I wanted to thank Dr. Taylor. I wanted to thank Dr. Christina Nicosia. I wanted to thank, I'm bad with last names, Chrissy and Caitlin, our middle school.
Michelle Rodriguez.
Michelle Rodriguez for putting this program together because it's really going after the kids who need it the most. And it's really a wonderful thing that's happening. So let's make it happen and really support them.
Couldn't we just, if we have X number of weeks until the end of the school year, say, for X number of weeks, and then if it was to continue into next year, we could reauthorize it. But I hear what Chris is saying, not to just write a blank check.
I agree with that.
It does make sense to clarify that it's for CARES. It's for CARES. It's going to be paid for with CARES funding, but we're authorizing it until the end of the year, and then we'll see how much money we get and blah blah blah.
Darcy, thank you. That's very good. It's getting late. I'm getting tired.
I would be happy to amend.
Michelle, maybe you want to cut. Michelle, maybe you want to get your video off.
Where it appears, if that helps.
Yep, that's better.
Okay, I just wanted to say, I'm happy to amend the item in the curriculum agenda, if that helps.
I don't think it, let me look. I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. In fact, no, it should be in personnel, because in personnel, we're outlining the number of hours per week. So we should allocate the number of weeks and say it's CARES money. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Hi,
Okay.
quick one, Mark.
Yes, please, Monique.
And I guess this is for Scott, just to clarify that we are going to get additional details about the students being targeted for this program, right? And the parameters around the program in terms of require compulsory or not at the various levels. I know some of this discussion we had in curriculum, and we're still waiting for some more specifics on that.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing that up, because I didn't have time to email you back this evening or text you when we were going back and forth. I want to be clear that the program that we just discussed is different than the program that I know that you and your committee had some concerns about. That other program, which we discussed, would run through the summer. It affects the other, 71% of kids, I think, who didn't take part in the mentorship program. And I can make that more clear later.
Oh, okay. I thought there was quite a bit of crossover there, but there's not. We are talking about two distinct.
Yeah. So I just want to. I'll be brief, because I know, like Mark said, we're getting late into the evening. The 20 some odd % of kids who are electing to take part in the program that you're going to likely have mentors approved to work through are kids who are going to be working with mentors and their teachers who from whom they receive failing grades or incompletes, to find ways to demonstrate their proficiency in the subject area, so that we can move them forward, not have to overwhelm them with making up all the work they may not have done, but just share their proficiency in the subject area, so we can convert that incomplete to something else. It's the other students who I know you, your committee, and I, and perhaps Michelle McFadden and her committee can talk about. We've got some time to look at that, because we're not focused until the summer on those kids. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, we can. Yeah, I can certainly follow up in an email with this. Trying to get things clear in my head. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, with no other questions, then Darcy, I'll turn it over to you for policy.
Yeah, I don't really have anything additional other than the policies that are on the agenda for second reading, other than to just explain why we don't have any policies for first reading. As you guys know, prior to this month, we thought we had gotten to the end of our outstanding policy backlog. And when I then dove into a list that Susan O'Dada has been keeping, kind of like an overall master list of policies, what I learned, much to my dismay, is that we are actually behind 2 additional policy alerts, in addition to a third one, which has just come out. So I thought I was all prepared for the next policy meeting, and I was not. So I canceled this month's policy meeting. I'm trying to get myself on top of those 3 policy alerts, and I hope that for next month, what I will have is an updated list for each of the committees to go over another chunk of policy that then we will actually be caught up, and hopefully there is not another policy alert before we get caught up. There's only a handful left from the last batch. And Michelle and Monique, I emailed you guys about just a smattering of policies that are still left from the last batch for your committees. And I know you guys have had a bunch of other stuff on your plate, but if you could get to those few policies, that would be fantastic before the next clump comes. So that's my goal, is before we all meet next month, for us to have a list for each committee to look at.
Darcy, thank you. Okay, so let's go on to equity and excellence. Monique, I know you have a long report. I read it earlier. It's really also excellent, as Michelle and Anne's reports were. So take over, please.
Thank you. I was about to say I have a light report relative to how our reports typically
I don't know. It was not there.
And I can, yeah, and I could give the short version here.
Wait.
So yes, we did not get two policies that we intended to get to, Darcy, but we certainly have that on our agenda for our upcoming meeting. First topic on our agenda, we met this past Thursday, and the first topic on our agenda was a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee idea that our DEI coordinator, Ms. Tara Young, proposed to Scott, and he really supports the idea. And this committee, the idea is to have a committee that can collaborate in a district-based committee of staff and district employees and students who may want to join over time, but who would collaborate on new ideas, best practices, and ways to supporting existing programs related to diversity, equity, and inclusion within the district across the school buildings. And so the idea would be to just have many voices, as many voices as possible, or who are interested in being on this committee, to have input on how to help the district move forward with the initiatives in these areas. The committee will work directly with Tara as a stakeholder group, and will also liaison with Scott so that they can help implement board/superintendent initiatives. So we're excited to hear more about that as that starts to come to fruition. Another idea that Scott presented that I think came out of a conversation with him and Ms. Young as well is the idea to start a social justice club. And two possible models for us already existing sort of models around student social justice clubs were presented to Scott. I also added the Youth Participatory Action Research Model, YPAR, which is another very well-known, I guess, model for social justice type of student-led research projects. And we happen to have a program that operates right out of the Rutgers GSE. One of our staff members at Irving actually did a YPAR project, implemented a YPAR project 2 years ago, I believe, at Irving, correct, Scott? I've always—
Yeah, at Bartle.
At Bartle, I'm sorry, yeah, at Bartle. But the wonderful thing about YPAR projects is that you can work with students as young as, early childhood age on the ideas you work on, and identify topic or issue of concern to the students in their either school community or the broader community in their town or city. And so they would research their idea under the supervision of in our case, a Rutgers graduate school member of the YPAR program, and who would see them through their research project and design, and they would present it to their community and have a big shebang at the end of the project period. And so, that was another option that was added for Scott and Tara to consider when looking at particular platforms. We also discussed the idea of first, because it's a great idea on the adults' part, but to really tap into the students' body through a survey or other ways of finding out from students what the interest level is in such a social justice club, and across school buildings, of course. Scott estimated that the new club would require a $3,000 to $4,000 stipend for whoever the club advisor would be, though he anticipates that the first year, the advisor would sort of function on more of a voluntary level. So that, I think, Scott's hoping to possibly start getting off the ground for next school year. Then our last topic, which is an ongoing discussion we've been having in our committee, was around AP honors class access and the prerequisites for those two levels of classes. Scott is moving forward toward the goal of improving access to these classes and making them more representative of our student body. He has been doing research and looking at other school districts, the few that have worked towards making these higher level classes more accessible. And he will be continuing to work with the leadership team on furthering the plans that are already sort of in the work to make this happen. So we really look forward to hearing what those details and what that plan looks like by our next meeting. And really, we as a committee are committed to pushing this forward and seeing this happen. So with that, I will end my report the only other minor discussion we had was just a follow-up to the discussion that we've already had in the curriculum meeting, or relative to the curriculum committee meeting. So that is all I have for now.
Thank you, Monique. Anybody have any questions? And I wanted to say there's a number of these are really, really good work in progress. That the honors AP, I would say is about time. So I'm hopeful we can really move forward with that.
Yes, definitely. And that student presentation really just, kind of sealed the deal there in terms of the how we need to prioritize it. Is certainly the students have reflected their concern and kind of the overwhelming sense of need to make these classes more accessible. They see how disparities and how inequitable it is. So it's really wonderful to have kind of that wind also pushing us forward.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you, Scott, as well, for just keeping these initiatives going. There's of course, there's so much going on right now, but as I think Mark mentioned earlier, Scott, there's all the pandemic related decisions that have to be made. We're still operating in this emergency mode, but yet just the meat of what we would be doing, pandemic or not, we still are trying to engage in that work. And so I appreciate you for, just continuing to focus on that as well. I know we put a lot of pressure on you on these things.
There's that quote, Monique, that you and I should share with the full board at some point that we learned about at the workshop about how the pandemic is a pandemic is an opportunity, right? Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, I wish I could just rattle that one off, but that's an excellent quote. Yeah, we'll have to share that.
Yeah, which is essentially speaks to the reality that something as earth-shattering as a pandemic on this scale is ripe for change. It just begs us to make change across the board. Assessment, grading, access. Now it's done.
And that was by the great Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings, who, is a scholar, bar none. So thank you, Scott.
Michelle, you have a comment or question? And you probably should.
Yeah,
Yeah. Good.
I wanted to thank Monique for all of her work on issues between both committees, because, sitting on both the curriculum and the equity committee, there's a whole lot of synergy there, and it's hard sometimes to keep up with it. So thank you for keeping up with all of those things. But I just wanted to ask really quickly, if we made any progress in getting those students that gave us the presentation on our committees, any kind of invitation to give those presentations to the full board. Are we still doing that, or?
I'm so glad you raised that question, because you're not the only one. I think Chris actually asked about that in an email follow-up to my notes document that I shared with you all earlier. And honestly, I have not moved to the next step on that, because I wasn't sure if we made a decision that that's what we wanted to do. So I did ask Scott if he was still amenable to that. And I certainly am, and would be willing to reach out to the students to ask if they're interested in presenting to the whole board. I know, and these are seniors, they're all seniors, they're in probably a different space right now. So of course, if they decide they don't want to, I would totally understand that. And if that's the case, we do have the PowerPoint presentation that I would be able to share with you all as well. Because I think Darcy even mentioned it would be helpful to have the actual presentation. But Scott, if that's okay, I can certainly reach out to them.
Yeah, you may not have gotten my reply yet, but I got back to you because this was all a little while ago. And what I suggested, and Michelle, this is an answer to your question on my behalf as well, that we have them present, which I think they'll do. I know these kids, they'll come. I don't think that's an issue. We wait to have them present when I'm prepared, along with Monique, to roll out more details about this initiative to provide wide access for honors and AP classes. I think the timing would be great, and that could happen, Monique. I suggested in my email maybe in May, if we can wait till then. But if not, of course you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sooner the better. If we can just target we're going to get this done in May, I'd be fine with that.
I would say my 2 cents is the sooner the better as well, because it's a lot to digest. And yeah, I think with some time, we might actually get more out of it between your presentation and their presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. So on to our second and last public comment. There is a public comment period that was on the agenda, inadvertently incorrect, number 16, which I'm striking. So this is our last public comment. Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and reserve this time for your comments. Board policies 164 and 167 establish and regulate the right of the public to participate in public meetings. Raise your hand and I'll call on you. As I see no hands up, I don't have a president's report, although I want to remind my negotiations committee, that is Anne and Michelle and Marilyn and Rob R, that we have a negotiation session on Wednesday at 3 o'clock. And if you could talk to each other and discuss, our committees are so popular now, we have too many people on them. So for everyone to understand what I'm about to ask, someone can't come, otherwise we have a quorum. So if one person could, any of you can't make it, let me know and let everyone know. Otherwise, we'll decide who's not making it. Does anyone have old business? Does anyone have new business? Okay, seeing none, I move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I have a little bit of new business.
Oh, I didn't see you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I wasn't quick enough with the draw.
I'm trying to move it along.
So I have a kind of news, I guess, that I feel is kind of an update to our trans and gender nonconforming policy, but it's not specific, I guess, wording to add or anything like that. But in Highland Park is the producer of a series that has been put out on Amazon and Apple TV, as well as Topic, the channel Topic, and is available to stream. And I think that it is, it's the producer is my brother, so I have to say that. And the producer is also living in Highland Park. So a Highland Park resident has made what I think is a very educational, very entertaining, and very insightful series. It's called Trans in Trumpland. And it's not about Donald Trump, so it's not designed to create any kind of tension. It's actually quite the opposite. And it is about the reality of being a trans or gender nonconforming individual in the United States of America. So it is a 4-part series. The entire thing is 2 hours. So you could binge it pretty easily. And it does support the work that we have done on this board in supporting our trans and gender nonconforming district school members. So I would encourage everyone to check that out, not just because he's my brother, but because it is a really wonderful piece of art. And I want to just spread the word as much as possible.
Michelle, thank you.
I'm sorry, on that note, yeah,
Yes.
I do want to also add this to the new business, and that is an email that I received from our CPAG, our Parents Special Education Parent Advisory Group. Rob, I always get his last name.
Holsapple.
Yes, Hosapple, reached out letting me know that their group is organizing a Zoom roundtable discussion that will be on March 25th at 7:30 p.m. He didn't have a flyer at the time, and I'm not sure if it's been shared yet with the district, but I'm sure that's forthcoming. He's already confirmed that Dr. Elizabeth Torres, the director of the Autism Center for Excellence, and Paul Arozan, the governor's ombudsman for individuals with intellectual disabilities, as well as additional panelists, will be present for this particular roundtable discussion focused on issues related to students with disabilities and students receiving special education services. So I was very happy to hear that our CPAG is putting together such an event, and I just wanted to kind of put that out there now, and I'm sure it will be followed up with some sort of communication that the district can disperse to our families.
Yeah, flyer's going to be going out. I'm waiting for the green light. We're shoring up one more panelist. So right now we have 3 panelists, including myself. It's going to be great.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we'll put the word out. Facebook.
Get the word out, please. I may be free, and I'd love to be there.
Yeah.
Among others. Well, anyone else with new business? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut anyone off. Okay, so I'm now going to move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye.